Training camp is almost upon us for the Baltimore Ravens, and we take a look at a pre-training camp 53-man roster prediction coming up here next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, I'm your host, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire, free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. And also today's episode of the show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is who covered the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And this is a special week here, a special day almost. It feels like, again, football's in the air now. Training camp doesn't actually start for the Ravens till Wednesday, so we still have a couple more days here. But veterans report tomorrow. First practice is Wednesday. I mean, this Monday here, it's a glorious Monday. I'd even call it a victory Monday because we've made it. I mean, I'm excited for training camp. I'm excited to dive into a ton of different content here over the course of these next couple months leading up to the regular season. And today, we're going to talk about a pre-training camp 53-man roster prediction. I know I did this, I think it was about a month ago. I did a post-minicamp one, and some things have changed since then. And I kind of said it then. There's going to be a lot of change when it comes to these rosters and predictions and things, because some guys will get cut, some guys will get signed, even when we get to training camp. I mean, look, some guys are going to perform really well, others aren't. And then when we get to the preseason, some guys performing well, others aren't. So in the second and third segments today, we're going to talk about the 53-man roster prediction, of course, pre-training camp. So we'll talk about offense in the second segment, defense, and specialists. Again, we can't forget about those specialists in the final segment. But in the first segment, I do want to just kind of do the miniest of mini training camp previews. We'll talk about a couple moves that happened for the Ravens over the weekend. They were pretty minor ones, but still want to talk about it and cover it here today on the show. So a jam-packed episode, and we have a ton to talk about. If you're with us on video form and YouTube here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. We have a ton of great stuff coming out here. I really am excited to put out the Ravens content continuously here. Again, I've never missed a day of doing this show weekdays, 5 days a week, ever since starting back in 2019. That's not changing here. We're doing it. So if you haven't subscribed on YouTube yet, I highly recommend you do so if you want Ravens news, analysis, updates, historical perspectives, and more. We have you covered here Monday through Friday. Also in audio form, be sure to follow us there. It's the same show, audio and video, so you're not missing out on anything. Don't worry about that. And also be sure to turn notifications on there. So also be sure to follow me on Twitter at CashRocket34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens for show updates. But yeah, let's dive into this conversation now. And we'll start off with the moves. I think we'll just kind of get those out of the way first. So on Wednesday, the Ravens actually placed undrafted wide receiver Devon Williams on the did not report list, but actually on Friday, they reinstated him from that list. So I don't know exactly what the situation was. Again, I don't want to speculate on anything. I think that's not right to do. I think that he should either tell his story or just, I don't want to make assumptions for him. But regardless, Devon Williams back on the 90-man roster here. He's a big-bodied guy, really went and did a lot of good things over his last 2 college seasons at Oregon. So I'm excited he's in that mix with kind of the Shamar Bridges, Mekhi Polks of the world, to maybe Slade Bolden in there too. Slade Bolden's not a big guy, but still really did a lot of good things at Alabama. So he's going to be in that mix for maybe the 5th wide receiver spot on this team. So really glad to see him back on the 90-man roster. We talked a bit about David Sharp, the offensive tackle, with Kadri Ismail on Friday. So if you haven't checked that out, you should go do that. It's a really good episode. We talk about a bunch of different things there. But so Sharp is somebody who, again, adds to this Ravens offensive tackle depth, a room that a lot of people going into the offseason were thinking, well, how are the Ravens going to make sure that if Ronnie Stanley isn't healthy to start the year, and obviously we're all hoping he is, but if Ronnie Stanley isn't healthy to start the year, what are they going to do there? Now they have options with Morgan Moses, Juwan James, Patrick McCary. They drafted Daniel Falele. They have David Sharp there now. So I feel much more confident now than I did last year, assuming Stanley isn't able to play. And that's, again, hopefully he does. You just don't know in that situation. Also, and I guess I'd call this the biggest news of the weekend for the Ravens, is the fact that they actually waived cornerback Iman Marshall. Now there have been the jokes about, oh, is Iman Marshall a real person? Is he a real person? And first of all, yes, he's a real person, but he's a player that didn't really play for the Ravens. He was drafted in the 4th round in 2019 by the Ravens, a corner out of USC. someone who had pretty high expectations, was regarded as a very highly productive player, a very high character guy coming out of USC. And the Ravens, I think, again, have those high expectations for him, but just never really worked out. Had a couple of really major injuries in his rookie season. He ended up actually coming back for the final couple games. He only was active for 3 of those games, made 1 total tackle, and that is literally the extent of his stat line. His stat line on the Ravens was 1 tackle in 3 games. That's it. Missed plenty of time, and the Ravens have so much depth in their secondary now. It was a long shot already for him to make the roster. I'll give a spoiler before this news. He was not on my 53 man, but yeah, it seemed like he didn't really have a shot. So maybe this is the Ravens letting him go now to find an opportunity elsewhere and not really kind of have him hanging on till the end of training camp. I don't know. Again, I don't want to speculate, but it is kind of a disappointing end to a draft class for Eric DeCosta, which again, everybody from that draft class is not off the team. But you have a draft class. I mean, the top 2 picks were Marquise Brown in that draft, and then obviously Jalen Ferguson. Now, Brown got traded. Ferguson, obviously, the very tragic passing. So I'm not going to count Jalen Ferguson in this whole thing. But then you have guys like Miles Boykin, Dalen Mack, Trace McSorley, Marshall in there as well. Just guys who didn't really make impacts all that much. Really, the only guy who made that impact was Marquise Brown. Now, the only 2 guys remaining from that draft class now on the Ravens roster are Ben Powers and Justice Hill. And both of those guys, I mean, I think high expectations, but not a lot of production to show for it. Injuries, lack of high-level play, it's all contributed. So Eric DeCosta's draft class in 2019 is his first ever one. I admit, not super high marks from a lot of people, but I do think he did better in 2020, 2021. And obviously, we know the 2022 class and how everybody thinks that's going to work out. So Iman Marshall no longer a part of the team. It'll open up some more snaps for some of the back end guys who are trying to make the roster, maybe some snaps for Armour-Davis and Pepe Williams in the preseason, but Marshall no longer a member of the Ravens. And yeah, just like now a mini training camp preview here. And again, like the miniest of minis for this training camp preview. I'm excited. I'm excited for this team. The air around this team seems, I don't want to say it's different, but it feels like it was almost the same going into last year when everybody was fully healthy. And we're hearing about, we talk about is the Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. It feels like those aspirations are back, but it feels like the outside now. What's different is the outside. Guys, people outside the organization seem to be counting out the Ravens. It seems like they're a forgotten team to a lot of people, where it's, they finished 8-9 and they didn't make the playoffs. And, first time since 2017, they did that. Lamar Jackson was injured for the back half of the season. And how are these guys going to respond to injury? And there are all these things that people are saying about the Ravens that just makes it seem like people don't have confidence in them. Now, I do know a lot of people who do, right? I'm not saying everybody on this earth doesn't have confidence in the Ravens. There are a lot of people who do, obviously people who watch the team, are fans of the team, cover the team, right? They know what's up. Like they know what's going on with this team right now. There are people from outside the organization who also believe, but I think with the way that Chuck Clark, I go back to Chuck Clark, with the way that he said the watch how we bounce back line after that week 18 loss to Pittsburgh. I mean, the season was so frustrating for so many of those guys. I mean, I can only imagine how, you're showing up for work each day, not knowing who's going to be available to practice, not knowing who's going to be available to play. And that's every team, right? Injuries were not just the Ravens exclusive thing in 2021. I'm not trying to say that, but the Ravens were by far the most injured team in 2021. And that is something I will say. So with the way that the Ravens had to navigate that the whole season, their practice squad was shuffling every week with new guys because guys were getting called up, or they had to bring in a guy at another position because they didn't have that. The roster was just all over the place. I mean, you had guys like Darrell Worley playing in week 16 against Cincinnati, giving up touchdowns. I mean, it was a brutal thing that the Ravens had to go through last year. But now with their guys healthy, hopefully they're able to return week 1 fully healthy. If not, obviously my stance is still to rest them. Just let them rest till they're ready. You still have guys coming back like Lamar Jackson, like Marlon Humphrey from injuries that were of the less serious kind. Still serious things, but of the less serious kind. It feels like those guys are ready to go. I'm excited. The free agent additions the Ravens made, Marcus Williams, Morgan Moses, other guys, I'm excited for those. The draft picks, I mean, headed by Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum, that class is just, I still am very impressed with Eric DeCosta and how he was able to pull that off. So there's an aura about this team now. They're going to feel like they're underdogs, and we know how the Ravens work as underdogs. We saw it in the Joe Flacco era, right? When that team was a wild card team for many years. They will go in. I mean, they go into New England, upset New England. They go into this place, upset this team, right? They have this amazing performance in the playoffs. So even if the Ravens don't win the division, side note, I have them winning it right now. But if they don't, and they're a wild card team, let's say, I still think they can make some noise in the playoffs. I think they can make some noise in the regular season. This is a team getting back fully healthy pieces, fully healthy stars that is playing a fourth place schedule this year. I think the defense is going to be improved. The offense is going to be able to hit its stride this season. I feel like it just feels like it's setting up for them. Now, I'm not guaranteeing a Super Bowl. I can't do that because, you can't guarantee anything. But I do feel like this team has what it takes to make a deep run of the playoffs. Health has to permit, though. The guys have to gel. Mike Macdonald, new defensive coordinator. How is that going to work out? But I do like where the Ravens are heading into training camp. We'll see if any additions are made, any significant subtractions, any injuries. We'll see. But for right now, I'm still very excited about this team. And coming up here, we're going to be diving into my 53-man roster prediction pre-training camp here. So we're going to talk about the offense first. We still have a ton to talk about here on the show. But first, though, I do want to tell you a bit about Bet Online. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check out all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for our sports wagering information from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. So head over to BetOnline today. Use a mobile device to learn more about the trends in action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still hanging out with you here. And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen today. And be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, like this video in video form, and also follow us in audio form and turn notifications on there. Because now we're going to be able to talk about the Ravens and training camp and everything relating to this team heading into the 2022 regular season. So you're not going to want to miss out on that. But if you hear this now, you're not going to miss out on the pre-training camp 53-man roster prediction I have. Now, again, I did this about a month ago. There are some changes, though. There are some changes that I do want to dive into here, and they're important ones. And I'm going to specify a little bit here to start. So I'm assuming everyone is going to be healthy week 1 except for Tyus Bowser and David Ojabo. Those two guys, so Bowser and Ojabo, I have them on the PUP list already. I'm not going to take them off of that. So I'm just going to not count them towards the roster. But for this exercise, I'm not saying that I think they're all going to be healthy. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But for this exercise, J.K. Dobbins is going to be on the roster. Gus Edwards, Ronnie Stanley, Marcus Peters, etc. So we'll start with offense, start with quarterbacks. I still have 2 of them, Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley. I think there are too many other positions the Ravens need to keep guys at and quality guys at to kind of justify keeping 3 quarterbacks on this roster. I just don't see it right now. The Ravens also have Brett Hundley and they have Anthony Brown. I think one of those guys could be a perfect fit for the practice squad, but I don't see an extra roster spot being taken up on a 3rd quarterback this year. They've done it before, right? They had Jackson and Joe Flacco and Robert Griffin III, and they had Trace McSorley and everything, but I just think this year's going to be 2 guys at the quarterback position. Running back wise, I have 4. I have J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Tyler Beatty, and Mike Davis. Now, assuming that those guys are healthy, those are the 4 I have. I do think it'll be 4 running backs this year. You have Nate McCreary, who could be an option. Like, let's say J.K. Dobbins starts on the PUP list and he has to miss the first 6 weeks here. Maybe you look at a guy like Nate McCreary to come on to the roster, or maybe the Ravens look to add somebody else. I have a couple of guys who I've kind of noted is very end of the line guys who just barely miss the roster, but could be options if someone has to start on PUP that I don't currently have. So maybe Dobbins is one of those guys. McCreary is definitely somebody that could be, but for now, yeah, Dobbins, Edwards, Beatty, and Davis, I think that gives them a very formidable running back room. I mean, we know what Dobbins and Edwards are when they're healthy. Mike Davis is a veteran who can catch passes out of the backfield. Tyler Beatty, almost a wild card guy, but has many different experiences coming out of Missouri, and he played there for a very long time, both as a runner and as a pass catcher, did a lot of great things. So again, that running back room, I'm very confident in, as opposed to what we started the year last year. If you're looking at the Ravens and you're saying to yourselves, well, we had Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, then those guys go down, and the Ravens are saying to themselves, well, now we have to sign Latavius Murray. Now we have to sign Le'Veon Bell and Devonta Freeman. So I think now what the Ravens have, it's a lot better than what they had at the start of last season. Fullback is one, is Patrick Ricard. Ben Mason's the other guy. I think he's a prime practice squad candidate. And yeah, I mean, there's not really a ton to talk about there. I think Ricard is somebody who's very valuable to this offense. And now that the Ravens have Ben Mason in the event of a Ricard injury, hopefully, again, it doesn't happen, but in the event of that, that's a very good thing to have. So I'm excited about that. Then you have 5 wide receivers. I do think it'll be 5. Usually we've seen 6, but I just think with the way things are trending right now, it looks more like the Ravens are going to keep more of the run heavy bully ball style. They're going to try to bring it back, it feels like. So I think 5 wide receivers fits that. My 5 are Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, Tylan Wallace, and Shamar Bridges. Shamar Bridges is my number 5 here, someone who I think could really make an impact. And maybe Shamar Bridges isn't active on game days for, half the year or something, but I still think that he's going to impress in the preseason, it feels like. But there are other talented players there. Mekhi Polk was on my previous prediction. I have him off of it this time. You also have Devon Williams, who we talked about, Slade Bolden, and also guys who aren't even rookies. Benjamin Victor's been with the team for a little bit now. Jalen Moore been with the team for a little bit. Maybe the Ravens bring in a veteran guy, but of course we're not talking about that now because they haven't done that yet. So yeah, I think for Baltimore, those are the 5 wideouts I have. Tight end wise, pretty easy here. It's 4 for me: Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, Charlie Kolar, Isaiah Likely. Nothing too crazy. I mean, Josh Oliver, I think, still has the talent to make this roster. I just don't think there's going to be enough space for him. Maybe they look to trade him in a Ben Bredeson type deal where they know they're not going to be able to keep him, and they know he's not going to make the practice squad probably. So it's more of a, all right, let's see what we can get for him type deal. I think that's what the Ravens could be thinking to themselves in the Josh Oliver situation. Well, I have 9 offensive linemen still. I had that last time. I'll read them off. Ronnie Stanley, Ben Cleveland, Tyree Phillips, Patrick McCary, Tyler Linderbaum, Kevin Zeitler, Morgan Moses, Juwan James, and Daniel Falele. But I do have a note here that says Tristan Colon could be an option if there's somebody going on the pup list. So if you have J.K. Dobbins going there, Gus Edwards, Ronnie Stanley, even Marcus Peters, maybe the Ravens do keep Tristan Colon. But for now, I just barely have him off the roster, and I had him off the roster last time. Reasoning being, I think that at the end of the day, my prediction is that the Ravens will go with either one of Ben Cleveland or Tyree Phillips at the left guard position. I think that moves Patrick McCary to the super 6th sub-offensive lineman, which obviously he can play a lot of center. He could be that backup center. I don't know if the Ravens have room to keep 3 centers if you're classifying McCary as that. So maybe it's another Ben Bredeson situation where you're trying to trade him in a 6th for a 4th or something, or him in a 7th for a 5th or something like that. Colon's a very talented player. I think he's really, really good, but I just don't think there's enough roster space right now. Maybe things shuffle out different. Maybe they keep someone else here and that allows them to do something else there. So if they don't keep an extra corner, they could keep an extra offensive lineman. But for now, Clone is off of my list, and mainly just because of the fact that it's a numbers game for a lot of this, and I think it's a good problem for Eric DeCosta to have. A lot of this and a lot of the predictions and what we're going to see, I think, throughout the entirety of training camp, the entirety of the preseason, once we have to get down to cut day here, it's a numbers game, right? Eric DeCosta has built this roster. It's not perfect, right? There are still certain holes, but I think he's built this roster very well to the point where at most positions, you feel pretty confident in the depth to the point where you're thinking, oh, can they keep like 60 guys? Like, can they keep 58 guys? Is that okay? You're not going to be able to keep all the talent you have. No team is able to do that. There are going to be some surprises on cut down day, it feels like, too. Not even, I'm not even talking about the Ravens. Like, there could be other teams. We always see it. A guy that's not expected to get cut all of a sudden gets let go, and teams are probably like, oh, okay, like, let's go out and get this guy. But what does that mean for the Ravens? Like, let's say in a hypothetical, a wide receiver is cut. I don't know a name. If you have a name, I'd be more than happy if you want to comment a name down below who you think could be a cut candidate for the Ravens from another team. If the Ravens see a wide receiver, like a solid veteran option, get cut during cut down day, that's an option for them where maybe they say, all right, well, now we're going to get rid of my 5th guy, who was Shamar Bridges or whoever it is, or maybe they get rid of a corner, or they get rid of a safety. I don't know. And they bring in somebody else. If they see a corner they like, a veteran corner, do they move on from, I don't know, Kyle Fuller? I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Fuller's here to stay. But it's a numbers game where you have to, first of all, account for the amount of guys you have on your roster and trimming your guys, your talent down to 53, but then also seeing if there's anything else out there that can help you and new options that pop up because those guys weren't available 24 hours ago or 10 hours ago. So it's a balancing game. It's a juggling act for a lot of different general managers, a lot of different personnel decision makers, and it can be tough. But Eric DeCosta has proven that he will go out there, make moves, not just to make moves, obviously, but to go out there and improve the roster, which I think is a very important thing because we see him do it in the offseason. We see him do it mid-season, right? The mid-season trades we've seen from Marcus Peters and Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue, right? We've seen that from him. So we'll see what ends up happening with the offensive side of the ball here for cut down day. But pre-53 here, for training camp, I have 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 1 fullback, 5 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, and 9 offensive linemen. Now, how could that shift? Maybe it's 3 running backs and 6 wide receivers. Maybe the Ravens get rid of Mike Davis. I think Davis is too important at this point just to have a veteran option back there who is still, I think, a very quality NFL runner. Not the best running back in the league, but maybe if the Ravens feel like they want to get a bit more out of their passing game and want to keep an extra receiver and there are multiple guys that impress, I don't know. Maybe I don't see them cutting Tyler Beatty. I just don't in that situation. I don't see them going below 9 offensive linemen either. Like, I'm not cutting Juwan James. I'm not cutting Patrick McCary, right? I'm not cutting Falele. So maybe, again, if someone goes on the PUP list, you can keep 6 wide receivers or Josh Oliver or another running back. But for now, that is my pre-training camp 53-man roster prediction for the offensive side of the ball. But we're not done yet here on Locked On Ravens. Coming up, we're going to dive into the defensive and specialist side of the ball. So be sure to stay tuned. Still something to talk about here on the show. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about Dave. And you might be having hindsight and it's 2020 and you can't change the past, but what if you get a little help from your future self? Maybe you'd ask to borrow a little cash. Now actually can do that with Dave. And Dave is the banking app that can help you get $500 instantly with extra cash up to. And that's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get the $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. It's just resupply banking provided by Evolve member FDIC. The future you will thank you. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still hanging out with you here. And thank you so much again for tuning in here, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to follow us in audio form, subscribe here on YouTube, like the video, follow us anywhere. The whole 9 yards here on Locked On Ravens. And also be sure to make your second listen of the day, Locked On NFL. I hosted the Monday show over there again. We talk about Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, a bunch of talented young quarterbacks, just how that Murray extension impacts Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. So be sure to check that out anywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. But let's now dive back into Ravens. Let's talk about the defense here. Pre-training camp, 53-man roster predictions, and the specialists. Don't want to forget about the specialists. So let's start off on the defensive line. I have 6. The guys they have, Calais Campbell, Michael Pierce, Justin Madubuike, Broderick Washington, Brent Urban, Travis Jones. This is pretty straightforward for me. I think that my favorite position depth-wise is defensive line. It might be tied. It might be tied between defensive line and safety because I love the safety room. But I think defensive line, you have a great mix of young guys, of veterans, of star power, of key depth pieces. It's all there for you. I mean, you have Calais Campbell, Michael Pierce, and Brent Urban, guys who all have had success at the NFL level in different ways. All guys who can bring a little pop from an interior pass rushing perspective, assuming hopefully the defense takes off in that aspect with Mike McDonald there. You also have Travis Jones, who talk about interior pass rusher. I mean, the guy was a beast in Connecticut. Like, that's one of the main reasons the Ravens drafted him. And one of the main reasons I'm still shocked he got there to them at 76 in the 3rd round. Like, legitimately shocked. I still don't understand. But I'll take it. The Ravens will take it, so whatever. And also you have the 2 third-year guys. Just Madubuike and Broderick Washington. I know that people are looking at Madubuike's stats and saying, well, I expected more, and I thought he'd do this. But there's so much that he's done beyond the box score. I just think it's all super impressive what he's been able to do. Obviously, you'd like to see a little bit more in that department, but I still think that this is a prime year for him to break out. And Broderick Washington, I want to give a shout-out to Broderick Washington real quick because he was somebody who I was on the fence about heading into last year. I didn't know. I had him off my 53-man roster initially. So, if we were doing this last year, I would have had him off at this stage. He had a great training camp. He had a great preseason. He played his way onto my roster, I don't know if he was ever in danger of missing the Ravens' actual roster, but he performed well. He made sure to show that, he has the stuff to do a lot of great things at the NFL level. So big credit to him. Big credit to Broderick Washington. So I love the Ravens defensive line room. But we get into the linebacker spots now. Linebacker is an interesting one for me. We'll start outside. I have 4 guys. Adafe Owe, Dalen Hayes, Justin Houston, and Jeremiah Moon. Now, you could make an argument for 5 here. And as I talked about in the second segment, as I was kind of debriefing a little bit of what this was going to be, I don't have Tyus Bowser and David Ajabo on here because I don't think either is going to be ready. Hopefully they are, but I don't see that right now. But I'm not a doctor. So I think for what the Ravens have, looking at roster crunches, there are going to be certain positions where you definitely like to keep one more guy, but you just can't because you have to keep someone somewhere else. I think this is an example of that. I also think inside linebacker to a lesser extent is that. We'll talk about that in a couple seconds here. But, I label Vince Beagle as someone who could make the roster if there's a guy who goes on the PUP list because of his versatility, both outside and inside. You could make the same argument for Steven Means, but I think that Jeremiah Moon's going to have a really impressive training camp, really impressive preseason. I love what he was able to do at Florida. He's a super uber athlete. I'm really excited for him. Obviously, the Ravens aren't getting rid of Owe, Hayes, or Houston. So I think 4 is a number for them that they can use. And then if you want to use Malik Harrison at some Sam, which I know that John Harbaugh talked a bit about a couple months ago, maybe we'll see that. So yeah, I'm excited. I think that the Ravens do have options there. And again, if Bowser and if Ajabo are able to come back, I don't know if it's the PUP list, maybe week 6, maybe you're looking at a IR stint where you bring her back in week 10. The 5, if you look at the 5 of Adafe Owe, Dalen Hayes, Justin Houston, Tyus Bowser, David Ajabo, that position goes from one where you're kind of like, I don't really know, to that's one of the biggest strengths on this team. I love that 5-man combo for the Ravens. So that there's outside linebacker. Inside linebacker, I also have 4. I have Patrick Queen, Malik Harrison, Josh Bynes, and Zacoby McClain. These are the same 4 I had last time. I'm a big Zacoby McClain guy. I think, there's a lot of questions about his size. I don't knock people for size as much as other people do. That's just not what I do. I think if you can play, regardless of your size. I know there are some limitations, but I give people the benefit of the doubt. I think you could maybe put Kristen Welch on this list if, again, someone's on the PUP list because of his experience, his special teams prowess. But I don't know. I feel like with the Ravens defense, you don't need to have 6 out inside linebackers. You don't need to have 5 inside linebackers because you can play Chuck Clark in the dime spot. You can move Kyle Hamilton up. Tony Jefferson can play that role. You can play multiple 6DB packages. You can play a lot of dime, where I think that you don't need to have all these inside linebackers on the field. So when on third down, you don't have to have Patrick Queen and Josh Bynes on the field together. You can have one of them on the field together. I'm not saying you can never play 2 guys, because I think, again, Patrick Queen, a huge candidate for a year 3 breakout. Josh Bynes having a full offseason is huge. Malik Harrison, this is a big year for him. I believe in him, but it's a big year for him. So I think for the Ravens inside linebacker group, I have 4 players there. Corners, I have 6. I have Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Kyle Fuller, Brandon Stevens, Armour-Davis, and Pepe Williams. Now, again, as I talked about kind of last time I did this, if you have Brandon Stevens as a safety, I'm not going to blame you, right? It depends on how you classify. I know the Ravens, I think on their website they have him as a DB, so that's what they're going with. But I think we're going to see him a lot at corner this year. I am confident in the Ravens cornerback room. It's not as deep as their safety room, which we'll get to in a second, but hopefully Marlon Humphrey can bounce back after having a down year to his standards in 2021. Marcus Peters coming back is going to be huge. Hopefully he's able to bounce back at 100%, be the player he was before the injury, because we all know what he brings. I mean, the high football IQ, the turnover potential. He baits quarterbacks into bad throws, right? And he brings fire. He brings absolute fire on the field. He's the ultimate competitor. The Ravens have a lot of those guys, right? Those ultimate competitors, which I love about their team. Kyle Fuller is going to need a bounce back year. Struggled in Denver. Definitely struggled in Denver. You're going to have a bounce back year from him, but I think he can do it. You can play him on the outside, play him in the slot. I don't really know what the Ravens are going to do in the slot. You could profile Pepe Williams in there, but is he ready for a big role yet? I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. You can play Brandon Stevens there. Darius Washington is another option, who I think the Ravens do view more as a slot guy. But for now, it's Humphrey, Peters, Fuller, Stevens, Armour-Davis, and Williams for me, with Darius Washington maybe if a guy goes on the PUP list, which I guess foreshadows, because last time I had a battle between Geno Stone and Darius Washington. I had Washington winning. This time I have Stone winning. I have 5 safeties in Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, Chuck Clark, Tony Jefferson, and Geno Stone. I think it's so close between those 2. And if you go back to last year, you remember the battle that we were having, or we were talking about, for the Ravens in terms of that final DB spot, whether it was going to be Geno Stone or Darius Washington, Nigel Warrior. It was actually it was 2 spots, I think. I think it was 2 spots for 3 guys. And Nigel Warrior ends up being the one who doesn't make it. A player had a great preseason, but now Washington on the PUP list with a foot injury he's picked up, I believe was in practice in the middle of the year last year. I think he broke his foot in practice. Who knows when he's going to be ready? Maybe the Ravens are able to stash him on IR for a year, and that's what they want to do with him if the injury doesn't heal as they want it to, and that can allow them to push that back an extra year. But I don't know. I think for the Ravens, they do have tough decisions to make here. The safety position, though, I love Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, Chuck Clark, that trio. You have the veteran prowess and Tony Jefferson. You have Geno Stone, who's a young guy there too, can play some back half. So very balanced out room. I mean, the three safety looks, I'm so excited to see the three safety looks. It's actually pretty unbelievable how excited I am about that. Then the specialist, no surprise. Justin Tucker's making this team. Jordan Stout's making this team. Nick Moore's making this team. A bit of an adjustment period it might be without Sam Cook in the fold. Now, I think a lot of people got used to that consistency with Sam Cook, right? And rightfully so. One of the most consistent punters in the league and one of the most consistent punters for a very long time. So maybe Stout will have a rookie mistake or two, but I'm confident in him. He's a very versatile player. So 53 guys, it's tough for the Ravens to be able to trim down to that. I mean, they're going to have a lot of tough decisions to make, as I've said probably 80 million times on the show already, but it's true. And I think it speaks to what Eric DeCosta has done. It's not a bad thing. You have to part with talent. I think if you have other talent, if you have a surplus of it, I'd rather much have that. You have to trim from 60 talented guys to 53 as opposed to having 45 talented guys and you're kind of a little bit iffy about your final 8 spots. I'd much rather have the surplus of talent, in my opinion. So credit to Eric DeCosta, credit to the Ravens coaching staff, the front office, and everybody who put this roster together. And again, training camp's in there. I'm super excited. We're going to be continuing to dive into that content throughout the rest of this week, the rest of this month, leading up to the preseason. Then that comes. Then we talk about those games. Then, man, the regular season, it's right around the corner. It's unbelievable. I'm really excited to talk about it. But that's all I have. If you're today here on Locked On Ravens, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to get back here tomorrow. It's, of course, more Ravens talk from us. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.